just tell me a little about yourself and what you do.
Well, my name is McCaw. I'm a biologist in Austin, Texas, and I help manage a lot of our conservation lands around the area, mostly focusing on prairie and grassland savanna restoration, also dealing some with invasive, endangered species and aquifer management.
It's fantastic.
Privet is one of the species that is problematic for us here in Central Texas.
And what are the different ways to get rid of it?
Well, if it's young and small, and if the root system can be completely extracted from the ground, preferred method is pulling it. With seedlings, you can pull it with your hand. With larger saplings, we have a thing called a weed wrench, which is a big lever with a gripper on the bottom, and you grip the base of the plant and just lever it right out. And if the soil is moist or workable, the entire root system comes out. And that way it's mechanically controlled. If the tree is too big to be mechanically extracted, then we have to use herbicide, which is a chemical that kills the tree. Some ways we can apply herbicide to the base of the trunk without it running off onto the ground so that it never touches the soil. And that way we can kill the tree in place. If it's a much larger tree, or if we need the tree physically removed, we can cut the tree at the ground with saws and apply herbicide to the top of the cut stump. And that prevents the tree from resprouting.
It's fantastic. So what herbicides do you like to use?
I don't like to use any herbicides. It's not my preferred work. With privets, we always prefer to use the least toxic but effective herbicide when other physical or mechanical or cultural methods don't work. So when we absolutely have to use herbicides. Two that we prefer, one is called glyphosate. That's the active ingredient in Roundup and some other brand name herbicides. Another one is called triclopyr. The difference between the two is glyphosate is broad spectrum, which means that it has the potential to kill any plant matter. Whereas triclopyr is called a broadleaf specific, which means that in general it only has the potential to kill broadleaf plants, and so grasses and sedges and things tend not to be killed by triclopyr. So one of those two is usually our preferred. Another one we use is called imazapyr. It's another broadleaf specific herbicide, and all of those are fairly low toxicity as compared to other herbicides.
It's quite deadly to invasives.
The trick is to make it deadly for your target undesirable species and minimally impact or have no impact on your non-target species. And if you apply the herbicides correctly, you can have that very targeted, almost surgical effect.
Now, you said you were doing some things with aquifers.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing? Are invasives invading them and causing havoc?
Yeah, well, the aquifer is underground, of course, and when we're trying to improve the quality or the volume of water entering the aquifer, part of our management deals with the vegetation above the aquifer, and so invasive species do affect that. Invasive woody plants have the potential to shade out the grasses, which hold the soil in place, and so you can get some superficial soil erosion. If it's really bad, you might get a little bank slumping or something like that. And also, when you see a broad sort of watershed level transition from a grassland to a woodland, from a savanna to a forest, there's less water available to make it underground to the aquifer, which means less water coming out in springs and rivers and people's wells that they use for drinking water and such.
That's quite good. Now comes the hard question. I have one hard question.
Okay, don't be too hard.
Oh, I like being hard.
Okay.
What is your favorite invasive or the one you hate the most?
Wow, that's a good one. My favorite one? Actually, if I had to pick a favorite invasive, I kind of like the Chinaberries. And the reason I kind of like the Chinaberries is because they tend to grow these tall, they're very a tall tree, and they tend to grow single trunks, or maybe only 2 or 3. And when they're very big and we have to fell the tree down before we can do a herbicide application, it's pretty fun to fall one of those big Chinaberries and to watch it timber all the way down to the ground. My least favorite ones are the ones that aren't fun to kill. Saltcedar is not fun.
Huh.
It's not fun to kill.
Could you just cut it down and apply herbicide?
You can. The problem with saltcedar is it produces like 1 million stems right from the base. It's not one single trunk that's nice
I like
and neat.
privet.
Privets are okay. The fun thing about privet is when you remove it, it's a stark change.
Yes, that's
And
nice
wow,
to
it's
see.
instant gratification. The hard thing about privet is it does produce multiple stems, and that can be a challenge, just physically removing all of those stems. If you're using a chainsaw, it tends to pinch your bar of your chainsaw and get stuck in the tree. So it becomes more complicated. All of these things that have multiple trunks and multiple stems are just not so fun to deal with.
Like cutting the privets
Uh-huh.
because their wood is easy to cut through.
It is. It's a
Soft.
softer wood. The softer wood.
That was fun, getting them and pulling them out and seeing how just that stump there. That was real fun. So
Good.
thank
Keep
you
it up.
very much.
Yes, sir. Thank you.